Welcome to another blessed day, dear friends and fellow believers. Today we're diving into a powerful message that speaks to the very core of our human experience, the journey of transformation through our brokenness. Each of us carries within ourselves areas that need improvement, patterns that need changing, and habits that need breaking. Perhaps you're sitting there right now thinking about those aspects of your life you wish were different. You're not alone in this journey. While we'll never achieve perfection on this earth, we can experience profound transformation through God's grace. Change is one of the most challenging aspects of our spiritual journey. When we look at the things we want to transform in our lives, we often feel discouraged by how deeply ingrained these patterns are. Think about those moments when you've tried to break free from a negative habit only to find yourself falling back into familiar patterns. This happens because our defects often become comfortable companions like well-worn shoes that don't fit right but feel familiar. Consider how a garden becomes overgrown when left untended. The weeds don't appear overnight. They gradually take root, spread their seeds, and establish themselves until they become part of the landscape. Similarly, our patterns of behavior, whether positive or negative, become deeply rooted through years of repetition. These patterns create neural pathways in our brains, emotional responses in our hearts, and habitual reactions in our daily lives. This is why meaningful change requires more than just surface-level decisions or temporary willpower. It demands a deep spiritual renovation of our entire being. When we understand this truth, we can approach change with patience, wisdom, and reliance on God's transformative power rather than beating ourselves up over the difficulty of the journey. One of the most fascinating aspects of human nature is how we tend to hold on to things that don't serve us well. We become comfortable with our imperfections, not because they're good for us, but because they're familiar. It's like sitting in a room with a slightly uncomfortable temperature. We might complain about it, but we've learned to live with it. This comfort in our struggles often stems from a deeper place, our fear of the unknown. Think of someone who has lived their whole life in a valley, never climbing the mountains that surround them. While the valley may limit their view and opportunities, at least they know every path, every corner, every challenge it contains. The mountain, though it offers a broader perspective and new possibilities, requires a journey into unfamiliar territory. In the same way, our familiar struggles become a kind of map we've memorized. We know exactly how to navigate our fears, manage our doubts, and cope with our shortcomings. Even when these coping mechanisms harm us, they offer a predictable kind of pain, unlike the uncertain path of transformation that God invites us to walk. Yet it's precisely this invitation to step into the unknown, trusting in God's guidance rather than our well-worn patterns, that leads to true freedom and growth. Something profound happens when we start seeing our struggles not as our identity, but as areas where God's transformative power can work. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 23 says in our hearts, "Be renewed in the spirit of your minds." This renewal begins when we stop defining ourselves by our struggles and start seeing ourselves through God's eyes. Every habit, every pattern we maintain exists because it serves some purpose in our lives. Like a child who learns that crying loudly gets attention, we've developed ways of coping that might have served us once, but now hold us back. These patterns might offer temporary relief or a sense of control, but they prevent us from experiencing true freedom in Christ. The spiritual dimension of our struggle cannot be ignored. There's an enemy who wants to keep us stuck in our patterns of brokenness. He whispers lies that say we can't change, that we're defined by our failures, that transformation is impossible. But 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 17 reminds us, "Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come, the old has gone, the new is here." What's remarkable about this spiritual battle is that the enemy often attacks most fiercely when we're closest to breakthrough. Like a sunrise breaking through storm clouds, the moment just before dawn is often the darkest. When you start taking steps towards positive change, When you begin believing God's promises over the lies you believed, that's when the resistance intensifies. But here's the beautiful truth. This resistance itself is often a sign that you're moving in the right direction. The enemy doesn't fight against what isn't threatening his territory. Your struggles and doubts aren't signs of failure. They're evidence that you're engaged in the battle for transformation. Remember, you're not fighting for victory. In Christ, you're fighting from victory. Every lie that says you can't change can be countered with the truth that God's power within you is greater than any force that tries to hold you back. You are not alone in this battle, and the very fact that you're facing opposition means you're on the path to breakthrough. True change begins with truth, not just knowing it intellectually, but embracing it deeply. Think about a room that's been dark for years. The dust and dirt accumulate in the shadows, but once light enters, we see everything clearly. Similarly, when we allow God's truth to illuminate our lives, we begin to see our patterns and struggles with clarity. This process of illumination can be both liberating and uncomfortable. Just as our eyes need time to adjust to bright light after being in darkness, our hearts sometimes flinch when truth exposes areas we've kept hidden. But this momentary discomfort leads to lasting freedom. It's like cleaning out an old closet. At first, pulling everything out creates more mess than when we started. But this temporary chaos is necessary for genuine ordering and restoration. God's truth works in our lives the same way. When we allow it to penetrate our hearts, it might initially reveal more brokenness than we realized was there. Yet this revelation isn't meant to condemn us. It's an invitation to deeper healing. Each truth we embrace becomes like a window opened in that dark room, letting in not just light, but fresh air, new perspective, and the possibility of real transformation. This is why surface-level changes never last. True transformation requires allowing God's truth to reach the deepest corners of our hearts, where our beliefs, motivations, and patterns reside. Transformation isn't passive. While God provides the power for change, we must actively choose to walk in that transformation. Isaiah chapter 43, verse 19 declares, "See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland." This promise requires our participation. We all inherit certain tendencies and patterns, both from our family lineage and our fallen human nature. However, these inherited patterns explain our inclinations, but don't excuse our choices. We have been given the power through Christ to choose a different path. Change happens through a beautiful partnership between divine power and human responsibility. God provides the strength, wisdom, and grace, while we provide the willing heart and decisive action. It's like learning to walk. A parent holds their child's hands, providing support and security, but the child must take those steps. One of the most powerful shifts in our journey of transformation comes when we stop identifying ourselves with our struggles. We are not our anxiety, our anger, our addictions, or our fears. We are children of God who happen to struggle in these areas, but these struggles don't define us. Transformation rarely happens in isolation. We need the support, accountability, and encouragement of other believers. When we share our struggles and victories with others who understand our journey, we find strength for the path ahead. Remember that change is a process, not an event. Just as a plant doesn't grow overnight but requires consistent nurturing, our transformation happens gradually through faithful obedience and trust in God's process. The foundation of all lasting change is God's truth. When we align our thoughts, beliefs, and actions with His Word, we position ourselves for transformation. The lies we've believed about ourselves begin to fall away in the light of His truth. This alignment with truth is like tuning an instrument to the perfect pitch. Just as a musician needs a reference note to tune their instrument correctly, we need God's truth as our constant reference point. When we're even slightly out of tune with His truth, everything in our lives starts to sound discordant. The beautiful thing about God's truth is that It's not just a set of rules or principles. It's a living reality that reshapes our entire perception. Think about wearing glasses for the first time after struggling with poor vision. Suddenly, what was fuzzy becomes crystal clear, and you realize you weren't seeing things as they really were. God's truth works in our lives this way, with bringing clarity not just to how we see ourselves, but how we see others, our circumstances, and our purpose in this world. As we walk this journey of transformation, we must actively put on new patterns of thinking and behaving. This isn't about trying harder in our own strength, but about surrendering more fully to God's work in our lives. This process is similar to learning a new language. At first, we consciously translate every word, awkwardly forming sentences and making many mistakes. It feels unnatural and requires constant attention. But gradually, through consistent practice and immersion, we begin to think in the new language. The same principle applies to spiritual transformation. When we first begin to embrace new patterns of thinking and living, it feels awkward and requires conscious effort. We might catch ourselves sliding back into old thought patterns or reactions. But each time we choose to respond in alignment with God's truth, we're building new spiritual muscle memory. Over time, these new patterns become our natural response, not because we've mastered them through willpower, but because God's Spirit has written them on our hearts. This is the difference between behavior modification and true transformation. One is about external changes through human effort, while the other is about internal renewal through divine partnership. Even in our brokenness, there is hope, not because we are strong enough to change ourselves, but because we serve a God who specializes in transformation. He takes our weakness and displays His strength through it. Today, I encourage you to take one step toward the change you desire. Perhaps it's acknowledging a truth you've been avoiding, making a choice you've been postponing, or reaching out for help you've been resisting. Remember, you're not alone in this journey. As we close today's message, I want to remind you that your brokenness is not the end of your story. It's often where God's transformative work begins. He uses our very struggles as the raw material for displaying His glory in our lives. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this message. What areas of transformation are you currently walking through? How has God been working in your life? Please share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if you found this message helpful, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more uplifting content. Together we can encourage one another on this journey of transformation. Have a blessed day. And remember, God's not finished with you yet. God bless you all.